Darkcast Network. Welcome to the dark side of podcasting.
Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way.
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Some content may not be suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
Hey, Big D.
Hey, how you doing?
You look like you're ready to derail this episode.
Man,
I can tell you that.
I have so many sidebars already prepared.
You do?
No.
I'm looking forward to this. How have you been?
I'm doing great.
That's good.
How are you?
You worked really hard today.
I'm making, the job of making the earth submit to your will. It's a tough one.
Well, you were telling me you're fencing and the ground, very rocky.
Very rocky, but we are in the mountains and it's very dry because we're in drought conditions here in WNC.
We have a couple forest fires raging all around us.
Yes, we do. And we have burning bans in multiple counties. And so be careful out there with your cigarette butts.
Yeah. We had a fire pit the other night and I was wondering, are we going to get in trouble for this?
But you had safety 101 on top of it.
Well, we did. It's true.
As soon as it started crackling, I put the screen lid on it. I have water ready to put out any minor brush fires that may occur. I'm ready, bud.
Can you believe Thanksgiving is just a few days away?
It totally does not feel like Thanksgiving.
It doesn't at all. I am not prepared. I don't even know. Are we going to do something?
People keep asking us because we are in the middle of trying to leave.
Yes.
Get ready,
packing up the house.
Load up in Lucy and head out. But I don't know. But it's okay. I've done a lot of Thanksgivings before.
Yeah, I'm kind of on the fence. I could go either way.
Yeah, I
don't mind to have a nice, quiet meal with you, or we could be around family. I think I'd rather just be with you.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I enjoy the big family meal, you never know what shenanigans you'll see.
Well, my dad has invited us to attend a Thanksgiving dinner in South Carolina, so we would be traveling to that dinner. And I've heard there could be some inclement weather hitting the East Coast this week.
Incremental?
Inclement weather, Dylan. Incremental.
What does that mean?
Inclement weather means nasty weather. Like Janet Jackson. It's
okay.
Nasty.
Nasty storms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I saw a headline on CNN about how some inclement weather could be affecting the holiday travel.
Yeah, you said there's a big snowstorm rolling up and down.
Well, maybe. I'm not really sure. It looks like it's possible.
There's some colored blobs on the screen. It looks
they
dangerous.
get them nor'easters.
Yeah.
Up in New England. So I don't know, Dylan.
So how have you been? How did your day go?
I've been hanging in there. I'm doing a little bit better. I was kind of in a funk. I'm trying to shake it off.
Man, I tell you, the funk keeps trying to
I
grab
think it's the seasonal blues. I have seasonal depression. I mean, I'll be the first to admit when it starts getting dark early and the cold weather sets in, I get down and out. I'm a sunshine person. I like daylight and warm weather, and I'm really active, and I'm always on the go. But the minute winter hits, all I want to do is sleep and hibernate and hide out under piles of blankets.
Yeah, I believe you come from a long line of vampire hunters. That's why you enjoy the sun.
Maybe. That's a good point, Dylan. Wow. So holidays just around the corner. I've been seeing so much just Christmas BS being pushed down our throats already.
Well, I almost feel like the
advertisements everywhere.
Oh my
People
God.
Shopping already.
It seems like they waited just maybe an extra week later to pull the trigger this year because it was, almost Thanksgiving time before you start seeing it everywhere. So I do appreciate that. Because,
at least we're not seeing the Christmas stuff in August. Well, some places, but
let us enjoy Halloween before you even mention it.
True, it's true.
All right. So you said you have a very interesting case.
Yeah,
for
so
us?
speaking of those noistas, right? We have 2 cases to discuss today. And they're going to be taking us to New England. Dylan, are you ready?
I am.
There are a lot of missing people in the United States. As of December 31st, 2021, the National Crime Information Center's database contained 93,718 active missing persons records. Almost 100,000 missing people in the U.S.
That seems like an awfully high number.
Around 2,300 people are reported missing every day in the United States.
Wow.
Some of these are runaways. Some are just miscommunications. Maybe someone drops out for a couple of days, but then they show back up.
Yeah. They
Right?
didn't tell everybody that they were going away for the weekend.
And others sadly become victims of homicide. Some disappear without a trace. The families and friends who are left behind suffer painful emotions. It is often said the unknown is far worse than having closure. So on this episode, Dylan, we will be discussing 2 cold cases from Vermont.
Yeah, I'm sure that having no idea what happened to your loved one would be the worst because your imagination is going to run wild.
I can't imagine what these people go through. Lynne Catherine Schulze was born February 9th of 1953 to parents Otto and Virginia. Otto was a business executive. He's actually in the nuclear industry,
Nuclear.
pioneer of the nuclear industry. So we'll talk about Otto a little bit more here. He was the breadwinner for the family, and Virginia was a school teacher. The family lived in Simsbury, halfway between Hartford, Connecticut, and Springfield, Massachusetts. The 2,800 square foot house on Brook Drive was nestled in a neighborhood with generous lots and big yards separated by trees. The idyllic neighborhood was a wonderful place to raise a big family. Lynne was the second oldest of 5 siblings. There were only 8 years separating the siblings in age.
Like from oldest to youngest, they were all born in 8 years.
Yes, and
Wow.
5 of them.
Holy cow.
So to say the family home was a bustling place full of life and commotion is an understatement.
I could only imagine.
Well, Dylan, you have a large family, right? I mean, there were 5 of you total.
Yeah, I had 3 kids.
3 kids, exactly. And it was always something, right?
It's a busy house. And then the person that I lived with those 3 kids loved animals, and we had quite a few animals as well. So yes, certainly a busy house.
Not a quiet moment.
No.
Janet, Lynn's older sister, had already left for college. While a student at Simsbury High School, Lynne was bright and academically successful. She was recognized by the National Merit Scholarship Program. Lynne had a tight-knit group of friends who spent the summers at a swim hole in the neighborhood and hanging out at an abandoned cabin in the woods.
You know, there's nothing like kicking it at the swimming hole.
I know, right? Doesn't that sound fun?
I enjoy a good pool as well, but something about a nice, clean swimming hole.
Imagine having one right in your neighborhood where
That-
you could walk every day and you had friends who lived in the neighborhood and everybody meets up. Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, especially as a kid, that would be a blast.
After graduation, Lynne was headed to Middlebury College in Vermont, considered one of the Little Ivies, a group of highly academic private schools in New England. Since Lynne's family knew her to be self-reliant, independent, I imagine she was seeking a taste of freedom that college often provides. College would be the first time Lynne was away from home for an extended period, away from the big family and experiencing new things. This has to be both exciting and scary.
Well, I didn't have the college experience, but were you having some of these feelings when you went away to college, or were you just glad to go away?
I was really just glad to go away. I mean, I think I was a little anxious about, are you going to make friends? Are you going to fit in? Are you going to adapt?
Right.
Is it going to be really hard? Is it going to be, overwhelming? You're going to have a lot of homework, that kind of thing. But I also went to college a short drive away, like only one county over. So
Right.
I could come home at any moment.
So, I mean, you go from elementary school to middle school and then high school, and there's, cultural and environmental differences between those. But I think college seems like an even bigger leap from high school to college.
Right. You're living alone for the first time, typically.
Right.
Kind of on your own. You don't have household rules that you always had to follow growing up.
Yeah, I think you start getting into adult
If
situations
I want to
as
eat
well.
cheesecake at 2 a.m,
Yeah.
no one's stopping me, kind of thing.
Oh, now I want cheesecake.
I do too. I've been thinking about cheesecake all day for some reason. Coming of age during the 1960s was unlike any other time in American history. There was civil unrest with the Vietnam War raging. The civil rights movement was in full swing. Young people were being swept up in the counterculture movements. It was a tumultuous period. They had the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King
My
to
gosh.
contend with in a very short period. And as a young person, that's a lot. I mean, it's a lot for the nation, but especially when you're you're in your formidable years.
I would imagine it would be scary. It's almost like your country's kind of coming off the rails in front of your eyes.
Fear of the Cold War was being pumped into living rooms at night via the evening news. 4 million students across the United States took to the streets to protest and do walkouts at different schools, colleges, universities. And perhaps Lynne was feeling nervous. Would she be part of these protests? Would she be an activist on campus?
Yeah, and so with John F. Kennedy in the White House, you also had the Cuban Missile Crisis
Yes.
and threat of annihilation of the entire world.
Middlebury was 200 miles away from home for Lynne. It was a 3.5-hour drive. And though Lynne had a driver's license, she would not have a car on campus. She would need to rely on public transportation, getting rides from friends, and sometimes hitchhiking.
And that's a pretty good distance. It's going to make it tough for her to shoot home and back, especially since she doesn't have her own vehicle.
We've talked about hitchhiking a little bit. Dylan, have you ever hitched a ride?
No.
Have you ever put the thumb out and hitched a ride?
No.
Have you ever picked up a hitchhiker?
I have a time or two in my life.
What was that like?
Well, I remember one time it was super cold outside, and I was heading to Knoxville to put up a fence. And I seen these two guys in the gorge, and if you're local or come through that area, you know it's kind of rough, part of the interstate.
I-40.
I-40, yes.
It's not a very walkable area.
No, super dangerous. Everything's narrow, and, you know, there's all kinds of, it's one of the deadliest stretches of
Rock
interstate.
slides happen
And I pick up
almost
these,
yearly.
I pick up these two cats who struck out from somewhere in South Carolina. But who I felt the worst for was they had a dog with them. I'm like, the dog had no choice. And I drove them on into Knoxville and dropped them off. And it was funny because I had me some snacks, road snacks. And I didn't have a whole lot, but I was sharing what little I could with the dog. And they're like, hey, man, you got some for us? I was like, no, I don't, actually.
But for the dog.
Me and the dog finished off the Slim Jims.
I love that story. Gotta love a road dog. When Lynne finally made it to Middlebury College, she learned her home would be in Battle Hall on campus. Middlebury offers a gorgeous campus, Dylan. It is stunning.
Really?
Surrounded by the Green Mountains. There's plenty of outdoor recreation from hiking, kayaking, fly fishing, camping, golfing, and skiing.
Wow, I must imagine that's a rather unique campus with all those activities available.
Exactly. Middlebury, Vermont offers rolling farmlands and the foothills of the Green Mountains. The downtown area has stately brick and stone buildings, a rich history dating back to pre-Revolutionary War times. The college has 17th century French architecture.
Wow.
During the early part of the 20th century, Middlebury was a leading college in the field of eugenics and had an extensive involvement in that program.
Well, I'm sure at the time it seemed like a great idea to get involved in this type of thing. Of course, you know, eugenics was packaged multiple ways. And a lot of times people didn't realize the slippery slope that it truly was.
The town of Middlebury catered to the college students with a variety of shops. And we've seen this before. We go visit your mom. She lives just in Carrboro, outside of Chapel Hill. You have Franklin Street. It's all geared toward the college kids.
Oh, big time.
At NC State, there's Hillsborough Street in Raleigh, kind of geared toward all the college kids.
Yeah, Chapel Hill is interesting because you have Duke University and UNC right there.
We got the triangle, babe.
And not far down the road, there you have NC State.
Meredith College, Peace College.
And not very far at all, you have Winston-Salem, the Demon Deacons. So there's
Winston-Salem State and Wake Forest.
a whole lot
University, UNC Greensboro. You've got Elon. Right there in the Piedmont, you got a shit ton of colleges.
You do have a shit ton of colleges.
It's true. And we all know a shit ton is a legit measurement.
It's a legit unit of measurement used in the South, and it means a lot.
So you've got this cute little town, and you have all these fun shops that cater to the college kids. Lynne was known to frequent the Vermont bookshop, and she enjoyed another store that sold knickknacks. You love a good knickknack, Dylan.
I can appreciate a solid knickknack.
He likes a knickknack, and he likes a paddywhack. But he does not give the dog a bone.
I will not give the dog a bone.
It's bad for him. During her first semester, Lynne spoke weekly with her parents by phone. Her mother sent letters each week as well. Lynne was known as a prolific letter writer, often sending up to 2 letters a week back home.
Have you ever...
She had a lot to say.
You strike me as a person who may have written quite a few letters in your day.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Because you are not afraid to pop off a strongly worded email at any moment.
Well, no. But even growing up, I had friends who lived out of state. I had it was like a friend that I'd met through, I was friends with the brother and sister and their cousin, and he lived in Minnesota, and he would come down in the summers. So growing up, I mean, I saw him like every summer, and we spent tons of time together, and he was a friend. So we would write letters like all year long and kind of look forward to seeing each other in the summertime.
And so then you would be excited when you seen a letter was for you.
Oh, heck yeah. You know, he was like my pen pal. And then I had a teacher that was a good teacher, really good, a friend of mine. When he left my high school and he moved and went on to grad school, we exchanged letters for a long time.
Nice.
And I looked forward to getting a letter from him, you know? So, yeah, I love to write letters. And actually, I was thinking, Dylan, when we go on the road, we should start sending people postcards.
That's a great idea.
We should have like a mailing list, and we should send people postcards from our travels.
Okay.
Wouldn't that be fun?
That would be so much fun.
So Lynne kept in touch with hometown friends, many of whom were attending other colleges in New England. Sometimes Lynne took the bus to visit them. Lynne would catch rides with other students and, again, sometimes hitchhiked. It was a common practice at the time to thumb a ride, yet Lynne confided in friends that doing so made her a bit nervous. And I see that.
Well, even if you're doing it, especially back then when it happened quite a bit more often, I think you should stay a bit nervous and hypervigilant. I mean, you need to be aware of your surroundings.
Well, just getting into a vehicle with a stranger, I mean, you don't know what their intentions are.
No. I mean,
there's that like kind of joke about which one of you is the serial killer.
Yeah.
I don't know. But we see in the 70s, people did definitely take advantage. And I say people, serial killers, maniacs definitely did take advantage of using hitchhiking to prey.
Yeah, but you also
victims.
had a lot more just regular citizens willing to stop and give you a ride. So I think you could go long distances a little bit quicker than maybe today.
She enrolled in a whittling class offered in the Frog Hollow district of Middlebury. She was really interested in crafts. Lynne also joined the college outdoor club because she enjoyed hiking. And though Lynne was single at the time, her friends said she had a very vibrant social life on campus. As the semester wore on, Lynne realized she didn't like college.
It's not for her.
She found the academics boring, mainly because of the long lectures that she was forced to attend. Lynne felt it was more meaningful to study the material on her own, read, and collect information that way. Though she didn't care for the college and discussed maybe leaving after the first semester, possibly transferring to another school, she continued keeping up with her grades. Despite being disenchanted with the Middlebury, experience, those who knew Lynne said she was, quote, an intellectual and a deep thinker who liked meeting new people and getting into thoughtful discussions about philosophy, art, literature, politics. I like those discussions.
Well, I used to like to have those discussions. Nowadays, it's hard to have any of those discussions without people be like, you're wrong, I'm right.
Well, we have those discussions.
We do have those discussions, and I really enjoy them. I like thought experiments, like a very hypothetical, maybe even oddball, scenarios. And you're like, well, that could never happen. But if it did, what would be the reaction or the causation of the effects of other things. I'm just trying to sound smart at this point. I did not go to college.
I like to take you to museums and ponder art.
You have broadened my horizons on those types of things, and I really enjoy it.
We listen to jazz, watch
Yeah.
a foreign film, have experiences that we can discuss.
Yes, we do.
I like that. By Thanksgiving break, Lynne had needed the respite of vacation. She let it be known to her family that she was not looking forward to returning to college where she would finish up exams. And let's be honest, I don't think anybody looks forward to exams.
No, you may have that, super academic kid who
Dylan.
is killing it.
Nobody likes to take a test. It's stressful. You got to study. There's a lot of pressure.
Man, I could imagine I would wait
And
till
exams, you've got like the entire semester's worth of information that you're being tested on.
and lots riding on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot
Everything,
of professors,
basically.
exams can make up a huge part of the grade. Some professors, it's smaller, but it depends on, the way the professor grades in their course. Sometimes the exam can really take up a lot of grade, and if you flunk it, like, you're screwed.
I could imagine I would be in my procrastinating way, or shall I say in my college talk, my proclivity to procrastinate. I would be waiting till last minute, even though I knew about this thing for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and I'd be like up all night, flipping out,
Yeah.
sleep in, miss my class. Yeah, I don't know if it was for me. I think I chose the right path.
I don't know, bud. Once Lynne returned to Middlebury College, she enrolled for spring semester on December 7th, deciding to finish the school year. Because again, she's this whole time thought, I don't know if I really want to continue here, but she's going to go ahead, finish what she started, finish out the school year. On Wednesday, December 8th, Lynne phoned her mother. During the phone call, Virginia noted that her daughter was in a good mood. Lynne was excitedly discussing the Christmas holiday and, what the plans were for the family, all the things that you would be chatting about with an upcoming holiday.
Right.
Making the plans to come home, what day you're leaving, probably asking, like, what you making for food, Mama?
Yeah, you always got to check out the menu.
By the way, here's my Christmas list, right?
And I'm bringing a bunch of dirty clothes for you to wash.
Yes, exactly.
Huh.
Lynne was scheduled to take an English drama exam at 1 p.m. on Friday, December 10th of 1971. On that morning, Lynne's roommate departed their shared dorm room around 7:45 a.m. And at that time, Lynne was still sleeping. Around 12:30 p.m., Lynne was spotted off campus outside a health food store called All Good Things. She was eating dried prunes.
That's a great name for a health food store.
The health food store shared a building with the Vermont Transit Authority. When a friend saw her outside the store, Lynne seemed morose and distracted. She told her friend she planned to buy a New York bus ticket and that she had withdrawn $30 from the bank. Lynne told the friend that she had missed the bus to New York. Instead of waiting in Middlebury, Lynne accompanied the friend back to campus. Around 12:45 p.m., Lynne was seen at Battle Hall, her dorm. Another friend, who was also taking the English drama exam, remembered Lynne looking for a pen. She had a favorite pen,
Oh, okay.
a favorite style of pen. It was called a cross pen, and she needed her pen to take the exam.
Well, yeah.
Her lucky pen, her good pen.
Yeah, it's her good luck pen.
I have a favorite pen.
You have a favorite type of pen?
Yeah.
Okay.
They're called RSVP pens. And they're like a gel pen, kind of.
I have seen those.
I love those pens. I have the best handwriting when I use those pens.
Okay. It's good to know.
And just so you know, the friend waited for a few minutes and by 12:55 realized that Lynne was no longer in her dorm room. So naturally, the friend thinks that Lynne has gone on to the classroom to take the exam. She was surprised when Lynne was not there come exam time. The freshman would be sitting for the first big exam of the semester at school. And this test was also for one of her favorite classes, English drama, and Lynne had studied hard for it. But she didn't show up.
Which I'm going to assume is out of character for her.
Yes, she would not appear at all to take the test. Now, after the exam, her friends went up to her room thinking they would find her there. Maybe she had gotten sick. Was she really nervous about taking the test? Had something happened? An emergency situation? Instead, they found the room empty. Lynne wasn't there, but her wallet, purse, identification, and other personal belongings were there.
And that's never good.
To her friends, that meant that Lynne had not gone very far and would be back soon. Only she wasn't. 2 days passed without any sign of the college freshman. When Otto and Virginia learned of their daughter's missing person status, they were concerned. It was unlike their daughter to skip an exam, especially one they knew she had been studying so hard for in the days before. Of course, it wasn't uncommon back then for people to be out of communication for days or maybe even weeks at a time. There weren't cell phones, and people had to pay those long distance fees to make phone calls.
Yeah, and that was highway
It
robbery.
was very expensive. Letters were used quite often because of their affordability. By Wednesday, the couple was in Middlebury meeting with college officials and law enforcement. From the initial reports that Lynne had disappeared, Virginia suspected foul play. She didn't believe the theory that Lynne might have taken off without contacting them. The Schultzes learned that Lynne had missed 2 college exams by that point. 5 days after vanishing, police finally took a missing persons report from her parents.
And that is 5 days too late for a missing person.
Yeah, we know statistically how important those first few hours and first 2 days are.
Yeah, I've heard even in missing person cases, 24 hours. The first 24 hours, very, very important.
Otto sent checks to Lynne and financially supported her life at Middlebury. In Lynne's bank account, she had $185. On Friday, a $30 withdrawal had been made. She also had a check for $25 from her parents, which she left behind, and about $7 in coins that were found in her dorm room. It appeared that all Lynne had taken were the clothes on her back and a book bag. She was last seen wearing a hand-knitted maroon sweater, a brown ski jacket, jeans, and hiking boots. She was also known to wear a Native American-style ring with turquoise stones. The week she'd been missing, the temperatures had hovered in the 40s. There was snow melting on the ground. So this is not exactly warm weather.
Yeah, and it's all slushy and nasty
Yeah,
out.
this is not the kind of weather that you would want to be out and about and probably only have on just a ski jacket.
Right.
Right? You need gloves, scarf.
Galoshes?
I mean, yeah. You would want to be geared up for this. At least if you're me, because I freeze to death.
Wait, I don't even think galoshes. That's more like rain shoes or boots. But yeah,
My snow boots or
warm,
something.
warm, waterproof footwear.
The initial focus of the investigation was to track Lynne Schulze's last movements. The important question was what had happened to her after that last sighting. As the Middlebury police continued their inquiries, they learned that Lynne had been seen at around 2:15 standing at the bus stop. Several witnesses claimed to have seen her, but no one could say for sure if she had boarded a bus. After that, Lynne Schulze simply vanishes. Of course, investigation in Middlebury was ongoing. Meanwhile, Lynne's family was increasingly worried. According to them, Lynne had indeed been stressed. She had been having trouble adapting to college life and had been suffering from homesickness. She had even confided in a friend, kind of in a joking manner, that she had a bizarre plan to fake her death and disappear and start her life over somewhere else.
Ha, ha, ha. That's just a joke.
I mean, I think a lot of people maybe fantasize a little bit about that.
I gotta say, I don't know. Maybe I want like a week off or a little time away from everyday life. But I've never really contemplated like disappearing and starting a completely new life.
You
somewhere else.
haven't?
No.
Oh,
Well, yeah, it seems like a lot of work. You know me.
I crave that kind of anonymity and adventure, Dylan.
Oh my gosh.
I just want to live free. I do. So, as you can imagine, and of course, her friends just thought this was a joke. Like, no one took her seriously.
Well, yeah.
Like, she's just kidding around. So as you might imagine, this was an incredibly stressful time for the Schulze family. Despite the assurances given by the police, they had suspected from the start that something bad had happened to Lynne. I mean, her family, they knew her. And that's the thing. A lot of times law enforcement will be like, oh, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
This kind of thing happens all the time. But you know your loved one.
But, I mean, in some of these cases, you'll see people's left their vehicles, all their personal belongings. She didn't withdraw, what little money she could get her hands on. That just doesn't seem probable or likely that anyone's going to go, let alone go for, maybe days or weeks away or forever and leave all their personal stuff. I mean, most people take that little bit of stuff with them at the very least.
I would, yeah.
You need money.
I would need to take at least like 500 pounds of makeup with me, right?
People would notice you when you got
I need to take my shoes.
And your clothes.
I'm going to need like a trailer just to hold my shoes and clothes.
The 30-foot U-Haul backed in and we knew Heather was leaving.
Yes. She was just not the kind of girl to disappear without letting anyone know where she was. Still, the family worked the phones. Lynne had a network of high school friends throughout New England. She regularly spoke with them on the phone and sometimes visited them in person. Unfortunately, none of them had seen or heard from her. Everything now rested on Christmas, a holiday that Lynne had been looking forward to spending at home. Surely she would show up for Christmas. Even if she had had some reason for dropping out of sight, her parents thought there's no way Lynne would let us, her family, suffer through the holidays worrying about her.
Right.
But December 25th came and went. 1971 edged towards its close, and still there was no sign of the missing girl. That was when Lynne's loved ones knew in their heart of hearts that she was truly missing.
Yeah, I think they already knew. They just were hanging on to a little scrap of hope.
Her parents celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary, and Lynne didn't call or show up. Then on February 9th of 1972, Lynne's 19th birthday came and went. Still no word. Now, at first, Otto did not want school officials to release the information about Lynne's missing person status to the media. After a month passed with no sign of his daughter, that's when the family agreed the information needed to go out to local newspapers. And see, this was likely detrimental to the case.
Yeah, it's certainly not going to help when you're pleading to the public. The public has, a short memory. You forget that thing that you saw 3 days ago that you really hardly registered unless someone asked you about it and jarred your memory. Yeah, that's not a good thing.
Several articles appeared across the state of Vermont, but yielded few tips. One of the tips that rolled in, well, we'll get to that here in a second. Investigators, they would take these tips, but they're always going to run into dead ends. So in May of 1972, one of the tips reported that Lynne might be living in a commune in Greensboro Bend. Police had no luck locating her there and believed it was a case of mistaken identity.
And that's quite possible.
Another woman reported seeing a young woman who fit Lynne's description sitting at a diner in Middlebury, and that she was wearing a dress and almost dressed kind of inappropriately for cold weather, and that the girl acted very strangely.
And that's likely why she remembered her at all, right?
Law enforcement was still operating under the notion that Lynne was just another counterculture runaway. Young people across the United States were leaving home, often without permission, to travel to places like New York City and San Francisco. We've talked about this before, Dylan, in our extensive coverage of Charles Manson.
Yes.
And the Groovy murders.
Yep.
You had a lot of young people like leaving home. They wanted to go be hippies.
Yeah, they were, and I'm sure some of them did fine. But a lot of times when they got to wherever they were headed, they realized it's nothing like they thought it would be. They were chasing some idealistic, romanticized version of like just, floating on the wind, man.
Yeah, we saw in Haight-Ashbury, it quickly turned to shit.
Well, that's what happens when you have this, large influx of people in a very short period of time.
Nobody has a job.
Nobody-
Nobody has money.
There's no kind
Drugs are everywhere.
of yeah.
Disease spreads.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Everybody's getting STDs. They're getting sick. They're getting pneumonia because they're sleeping outside.
Cholera, because they're I mean, literally you're in like 1800s conditions, nowhere to clean yourself, or you're stepping in people's poo piles on the sidewalk.
Well, these hippies were dropping out of society to practice free love and experiment with drugs. Sounds good to me. Perhaps Lynne had willingly left school to join the hippies and freaks.
I would argue no love is free.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Love don't cost a thing, Dylan,
No.
unless you're married. And then I expect you to hand over your paycheck.
Well, does that make you a sex worker?
I don't know.
Okay.
Depends on what you get out of it.
I'm satisfied John is all you can call me.
I'll take that. With no movement in her case, the family eventually sold the Brooks Drive home in 1977. Otto, who worked in the nuclear industry, moved to Virginia with the family, then went overseas to Iran for a job opportunity.
Wow.
By the early 1990s, Otto and Virginia were living in Florida. In 1992, the couple gave DNA samples to law enforcement. The new forensic tool was being used to help assist in missing persons cases, and they were hopeful to hear something. Unfortunately, the Schultz passed away before ever getting a resolution about Lynne. Incredibly, a half-century has now passed since the disappearance of Lynne Schulze. The case has long since gone cold, even though it continues to be worked by the Middlebury police if and when new leads come up. Those leads have been few and far between, although investigators made a startling discovery in 2015. Dylan, we have to talk about this.
What did they find?
A very viable suspect had been flying below their radars all this time. During her time in Middlebury, Lynne Schulze had been fond of visiting the small specialty stores lining its main street. So as I mentioned before, one of her favorites had been a knick-knack shop called Little Wings. Another was a health food store, All Good Things, which she had actually visited on the day she went missing. Now, it turns out that the man running the store at the time is one of America's most notorious murderers and quite possibly a serial killer.
What the hell? Who is it?
Robert Durst.
No way.
Dun, 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 dun. Yes, Dylan, there is even a film starring your favorite sexy man, Ryan Gosling.
Oh, I love me some Ken.
I know. You were into Ken. You thought he was fly.
Everybody was into Ken. He kind of stole the show.
He stole the show, for real. Yeah. So Ryan Gosling plays a young Robert Durst, and Kirsten Dunst plays his wife. And the film is called All Good Things.
Oh.
Yeah.
So it's about the store.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, okay.
Okay. So Robert Durst, everybody's got to know who Robert Durst is, especially if you're a true crime fan.
He's a big old POS.
Well, he is. But I'll tell you a little bit about him. He was the son of a New York City real estate magnate and heir to a fortune. During the early 1970s, however, Durst was estranged from his family and living in Middlebury, where he operated the small health food store with his wife, Kathleen. He closed the store and returned to New York in 1973. Durst would later gain notoriety after he became a suspect in the still unsolved disappearance of his wife in 1982. He would later be convicted of the 2000 murder of his longtime friend Susan Berman. In addition, Durst was tried for the 2001 killing of his neighbor Morris Black in Galveston, Texas. He was acquitted on that charge, although convicted of dismembering Black and dumping his body parts in Galveston Bay. Durst has also been connected to several other disappearances. He was serving a life sentence in California, but he has since passed away.
Ah, thank goodness.
So here we are, able to place Lynne Schulze in close proximity to a notorious killer right around the time of her inexplicable disappearance.
And not only that, it's not like it was just a one-time or one-off. It was a place that she enjoyed going and frequenting. So he may have, built some type of a either a relationship or, some kind of obsession with her.
Well, many ask, does that mean that she was murdered by Robert Durst? It's possible, of course, although we don't have any evidence that directly points to Durst's involvement. If he did kill Lynne Schulze, he did a good job of covering his tracks. The unfortunate truth is that we probably won't ever know what happened to Lynne Schulze. Too much time has passed in a case that never offered up too many clues in the first place. We can, however, draw some conclusions from the scant evidence that is available. The first of those conclusions is that Lynne left Middlebury College campus under her own, by her own choice, right? It is highly improbable that someone could have abducted her from a public place without anybody noticing.
Right.
Now the question is, why would a young woman like Lynne have just walked away? The exam she was about to take was one of her favorite subjects, and she was well prepared for it. She'd been studying for, weeks for this test. So why walk away?
Well, yeah, and she's already
why now?
Communicating with family about the holidays and Thanksgiving and all that stuff. So she, it sounds like she had planned out the next few 4, 5, 6 days of her life.
I mean, it doesn't really make sense to walk away at this moment, but then again, we don't know what was going on in her mind at the time, and stress can make people do strange things.
That's true.
Lynne had been a superstar, academically, at her high school, but was considered only a mediocre student at college. High achievers can find it hard to adapt to this change.
Right. Now you're a little fish in a big pond.
So that could have been the root of her unhappiness. And perhaps that's why she spoke of leaving it all behind and starting anew. So did she just kind of randomly decide on the day of her first big exam that this is the day? Fuck it, I'm leaving.
Well, I guess if you were
peace out.
You're thinking about leaving, or you're overstressed or whatever, I guess that's a good a day as any, right? Before you have to take this big important exam, maybe you just don't feel up to it.
Others wondered if she suffered some kind of mental break at the last minute and simply walked away. I mean, these are some perplexing questions that are made even more so by the fact that Lynne left all of her personal belongings behind. All we know is that she may have had around $30 in her possession when she went missing, which was more than enough money to board a bus out of town. And we do know that she was spotted in the vicinity of the bus station, although we don't have any indication that she ever actually got on a bus in Middlebury and left town.
Right.
So perhaps she accepted a ride from a stranger before her bus arrived, and maybe that stranger turned out to be a killer. I mean, what are the chances? But it happens.
It does happen.
Another suspect, which has been floated in this case, is another serial killer, Dylan, and that's Rodney Alcala.
Come on.
Photographs of 120 women, many unknown, were discovered among his possessions. A few of the women in the pictures resembled Lynne, yet some experts examined them thoroughly and don't believe she was one of the models. But it's possible he was on the East Coast.
Man, isn't it crazy how many killers were kicking it around back then?
Another serial killer who had ties to Vermont was Ted Bundy. And at some point, Bundy was said to have returned to Vermont to fetch his birth certificate. Now, Dylan, Lynne disappeared at the same time of the Rita Curran case.
Really?
That we discussed, what was that, just a few episodes ago, right? Maybe a month or two ago. And if you remember, Rita was a school teacher who was murdered in Vermont in 1971, just a few months before Lynne went missing.
And Bundy's name came up around her, yeah?
Yeah. But if you recall during that case, how many women were coming forward talking about these creepers?
A lot.
Men breaking into their homes, sexually assaulting them, peeping Toms. And there's a real problem happening.
Well, yeah, it seems to be.
Others point to Otto Schulze's work in the nuclear industry. It is said that he was a prominent nuclear engineer who was a pioneer in the industry. He worked at Argonne National Labs and held other like high-end jobs. So did his work in the controversial nuclear field have anything to do with his daughter's disappearance?
Well, and he also went to Iran and worked. I mean, of course, this was years ago, and the political landscape was quite different. But, that's very interesting.
Her senior quote in the high school yearbook was, quote, "Look to the future, remember the past, but live for today."
Hey, I like that.
If you have any information about the disappearance of Lynne Catherine Schulze, you can email Chris Barber at the Vermont State Police. It's christopher.barber@vermont.gov. Or you can text VTIPS to 274-637.
You never know. I mean, it's been many decades at this point, and likely we'll never learn any more about her case or what happened to her. But it's just so sad.
Unless they happen to find some skeletal remains.
Right.
It's unlikely. I mean, it's possible that someone could still be alive that knows what happened to Lynne.
Maybe a deathbed confession.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm just thinking it would have to be something like DNA or a deathbed confession.
That's very unfortunate. So sad, these stories.
She was such a cute girl, too. Like, her little pictures, she's so adorable and just looks like fun to be around.
Yeah.
She has that whole kind of carefree, the long parted hair, kind of dirty blonde, parted down the middle, long hair.
She sounds like she would have been a
like
great friend.
She just looks like a cute little girl of her time, Dylan, are you ready to discuss our second cold case?
I cannot wait.
Brianna Alexandra Maitland was born October 8th of 1986 in Burlington, Vermont, to parents Bruce and Kelly. The Maitlands owned a farm in East Franklin near the Canadian border. Brianna had a happy childhood and spent time training in jiu-jitsu. At school, Brianna was well-liked and had many friends. She had an older brother named Waylon, which, by the way, I love that name. I love the name Waylon.
It's a great name.
It is. People described Brianna as bubbly, outgoing. She was outdoorsy. She had no trouble making friends wherever she went. You're like that, Dylan.
You think so?
You're like a little social butterfly. I feel like everywhere we go, people just love to chat you up.
I can be.
Because you're a big talker.
Well, I'm just a blowhard.
Especially if you've had a drink or two.
Yeah.
Or 10.
I can be a bit much at that point.
No.
I've been told.
You're not obnoxious at all. Okay, so Brianna took care of horses and cows on her parents' farm. She often went four-wheeling around in their Jeep Wrangler. Friends said she was a backwoods hippie chick who adored her pets. She had a cat named Muffin and a dog named Lau.
Huh.
Brianna was known to wear quirky hats and make popcorn on a wood stove. To be honest, I want to be friends with Brianna. She sounds awesome.
Dude, she sounds awesome, and it seems like she has lots of fun.
The family didn't grow up with a television, so Brianna was a reader. She also could shoot skeet, ride snowmobiles, and track a deer in the woods.
I shoot skeet as well.
Brianna... Stop. Or do you like one of the yin yang twins?
Look, I've been waiting all episode. Here we go. Just got to work it in when you can.
Brianna never forgot a birthday, often decorating her friends' cars and leaving sweet notes for them. She was also known to be one of the prettiest girls in town. She was leggy. She was described as a leggy brunette with an infectious smile.
Sounds stupid.
On Brianna's 17th birthday, she announced to her parents that her plans were to move out of their home. Now, initially, her parents didn't understand why she would want to leave. Her home life was happy, and she shared a close relationship with her parents and her brother. Yet Brianna was fiercely independent, and she wanted to venture out into the world on her own. By moving, Brianna would switch high schools and be closer to friends. It was described that it was about a 15 to 20 minute drive, like to get to her friends where they lived.
Oh, okay.
Brianna seemed to prefer couch surfing over the stability of being under her parents' roof. And, at first they were kind of like, dude, no, you need to stay here. And when you're 18 and you're an adult, you can go. But she gave a pretty convincing argument.
I'm telling you, nowadays, when they get over 16 years old, even if they're legally not an adult, it's hard to get kids to make them do what you want them to do as far as what you think's right.
Yeah, I mean, even if you call like the sheriff's department or child services and you're like, hey, I've got a runaway or I'm having trouble with this kid.
Yep.
They're 16, 17. I need some help. Well, shoulder shrug. There's not a whole lot we can do to help you.
There's not a whole lot they can do. Trust me.
Yeah. So, I mean, aside from like what, taking a rope like a cowboy and wrangling them in.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do.
You need to get 4 or 5 of you and your friends on huge horses and you need to rustle some teenagers up.
Brianna worked 2 jobs to keep up with her living expenses. Her grades began to suffer at the new school, causing Brianna to eventually drop out. She finally found a bit of stability when she moved in with her childhood friend, Jillian Stout. They rented a modest home in Sheldon, Vermont, where they seemed to be doing well.
Well, it sounds like their parents' reluctance may have been well-founded, because she, being young, thinking you know everything, full of piss and vinegar, and it sounds like that they were right to a degree as far as how it could affect her adversely if she were to move out.
But she was finally back on track, so Brianna enrolled in a GED program. She continued working her 2 jobs. She held a dishwasher position at the Black Lantern Inn in Montgomery, Vermont. She also worked as a server at KJ's Diner in St. Albans. According to her mother, Brianna was excited about taking the GED exam and spoke about plans to attend college. Brianna really wanted to make something of herself. While Brianna was not known as a troublemaker, she did drink and party with friends, like a lot of teenagers do. At one of these parties, Brianna was assaulted by a friend named Keely LaCrosse. Now, these were girls who had been friends for a long time. They had kind of grown up together. So this was a big shock.
So she beat her up or attacked her physically?
Brianna and Keely had been friends for a while, as I mentioned. The falling out was over Keely's boyfriend, James.
Such a dumb reason.
While Keely was on vacation out of town, Brianna and James allegedly hooked up. So during the altercation, Brianna refused to defend herself, citing her jiu-jitsu training. She didn't want to injure Keely.
So what she's saying is basically her hands are registered weapons. And if she were to use those said weapons in a civilian setting, it could be just all hell would break loose.
Well, I don't know about all that, Dylan.
I suffered the same thing with Tiny Thunder and Little Dynamite. They're known in most of the continental U.S.
And I think her name is pronounced Keely. It could be Keali or Kelly, but I don't think it's Kelly. But it's Keallie. So I think that's Keely.
It can't be Keali, surely.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Let's just go with Keely.
I'm going to go with Keely, okay? So she didn't want to injure Keely, yet Keely brutally assaulted Brianna by breaking her nose, and Brianna also suffered a concussion due to this fist fight.
She should have put her in a rear naked choke or a damn triangle or something and choked her out.
But Brianna didn't. She got in the vehicle and left, but she did press legal charges against LaCrosse for assault.
As well she should.
The boyfriend, James, was an alcoholic, according to letters Brianna had written. She briefly stayed with him during her couch surfing days, but they quickly began to argue. He was a heavy drinker, and she just was like, I can't do this. So she realizes this is not something I need in my life, and I have to get away from this guy. And a lot of people said it wasn't really like she was staying with him due to romantic interest. It was more of just a convenience of having a place to crash when she needed one. On the morning that Brianna took the GED exam, she met her mother, Kelly, for breakfast. Everything seemed normal. Brianna left for the test, promising to meet up with her mom later for lunch and shopping. Shopping was said to be one of Brianna's favorite activities. Kelly and Brianna's friends spoke of her style, how she had a way of putting clothes together with just the right accessories. I guess she kind of had a funky taste. People said she She would go to like one of the most abstract clothing items in the store, something that everybody else would be like, what in the world? But she would put it on and know just what to wear it with, and it would look great on her.
Okay.
But the shopping trip didn't go exactly as her mom had planned. Now, at some point, while waiting in a checkout line at one of Brianna's favorite stores, she tells her mom she needs to go outside. Kelly said it was if Brianna caught a glimpse of something or someone outside in the parking lot. After paying for a few items, Kelly found Brianna waiting next to the vehicle. There was no one nearby, but Brianna seemed agitated, upset, and distracted. But of course, her mother doesn't really want to pry. Instead, she didn't ask her daughter what was going on and dropped her off in the driveway of the home she shared with Jillian Stout. Brianna needed to get ready for her upcoming shift at the Black Lantern Inn. So it was around 3:30 p.m. that Brianna departed in a 1985 Oldsmobile, which was said to be a gift from her deceased grandfather. And she loved this car because it had been her grandpa's car.
Well, yeah, who wouldn't think that's cool?
The car was registered in Kelly's name, but was Brianna's daily driver. Brianna left a note for Jillian stating she would be home after work. Now, Jillian does read this note, but she had plans to go out of town for the weekend, and she didn't hear from Brianna again. The Black Lantern Inn was founded in 1803. It was a popular spot for locals and tourists. From what I found online, it was a restaurant with an Irish pub, and the inn had its own microbrews, which they sold at the pub. I mean, now craft beers are pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, but back then that would be...
Back then, this was unique.
Right.
Right? Unfortunately, this place closed in 2015 because I was like, oh, this needs to go on our list of places to visit because it sounds kind of cool, right? Friday nights were known to be very busy at the Black Lantern Inn. Brianna was a dishwasher who sometimes waited tables there, like if they needed help. On this night, which was March 19th, 2004, the place was busier than usual. Sometime during the evening, Bruce and Kelly drove by the inn, planning to stop in and see Brianna at her job. However, the restaurant was so crowded, they decided against it. Kelly didn't want to embarrass her daughter at a new job, especially on such a busy night.
Well, yeah, and it's busy. You don't want to get in that mess. So, you just want to pop in and, make a show of it for your daughter. But, yeah, just get the hell out of there.
Well, due to this, booming, just busy night, dishes stacked up in the back. Brianna had to work later than usual to finish washing everything. It was around 11:20 p.m. that the workers finally finished their closing duties. As per tradition, the employees planned to hang out and drink after work. Now, Dylan, you had a brief stint in the restaurant business.
Right.
What do the kitchen staff like to do and the wait staff like to do after work?
Well, they like to have a cold one, I guess, if they're allowed to. Well, where I was at on the night shift, no one drank because the rest of the restaurant was closed. By the time the kitchen gets out of there, everything's locked up, put away.
Yeah, but even if they don't drink at that place, don't they typically
go someplace else and drink?
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to be the culture.
It does.
I did not partake in that because I have a loving wife at home and I was always rushing home to you.
Oh, you're sweet.
It's true, and plus my feet were hurt.
You're too old for that shit.
Man, they work hard in kitchens, I tell you what.
Brianna, however, declined the invitation, stating she was very tired and needed to get some sleep. She told coworkers about her morning shift at the diner job in St. Albans the next day. Brianna's coworkers waved goodbye as the girl departed alone. The drive to her home in Sheldon was about 20 miles away. Shortly after midnight, a motorist driving on Route 118 reported seeing something unusual. An empty car with the headlights on was parked at a rundown building known as the Old Dutchburn House.
Now, that is rather unusual. That would catch your attention.
The house, which sits on kind of a bit of a curve on Route 118, is locally known as the Old Dutchburn House, as I said. And it's called this because in 1986, two elderly brothers named Myron and Harry Dutchburn occupied the house. And one night, someone broke into the house to rob it. Both brothers were beaten nearly to death. They were taken to the hospital and eventually a nursing home, but they never returned to the property. So this is like a really old abandoned house. And from the architecture, I mean, you can tell it's got that sort of old New England, I want to say it's called like a salt box house, but that might not be the exact style of architecture. But I think, it's like a salt box style.
Okay.
If that makes sense. Would you see a lot of that in New England? So although the headlights were on, the driver didn't see anyone inside or outside the car. A little after midnight, another driver reported seeing the same car, but this time it had a turn signal on.
So someone's been back to the car and gone again.
Around 4 a.m., an ex-boyfriend of Brianna's said he noticed the car parked at the house as well. In the early morning hours, a group of travelers stopped to examine the abandoned vehicle. It caught their eye because the car was actually backed into the old house, causing damage to the wood exterior.
Oh, yeah. So it looks like a minor wreck or something.
A piece of plywood from one of the boarded-up windows was lying on top of the car's trunk. And it was just such an odd scene that these travelers decided they would take some photographs of the car. And I will actually be sharing some of those on social media. If you follow us on Instagram, you can go check those out. By early afternoon, a Vermont state trooper arrived at the scene. He noted the property damage, the plywood on the top of the car, and inside the car he saw there were 2 paychecks, some trash, and what looked like someone's personal items. He called a tow truck. The car was registered to Kelly Maitland. Due to a series of unfortunate circumstances, it would be days before anyone noticed Brianna's absence.
Yeah, and unfortunately now the car, which is always a critical piece of evidence if someone is missing, you find the car, you at least find a lead, has been removed from the scene where it's been left. So that's unfortunate.
Her roommate Jill had been out of town for the weekend and didn't notice anything out of the ordinary until Tuesday the 23rd. So by then she's starting to worry. Jill phoned Kelly to ask if Brianna was there or where she might be. And since Jill was away all weekend, she assumed Brianna had made plans or maybe just didn't come home because she was crashing with friends. Since she was scheduled to work on Saturday but was a no-show, the diner likely dismissed her as another flaky teenager who didn't want to have to come in and quit their job. So again, it's sort of a series of unfortunate circumstances.
So it wasn't like her employers were where she'd been for some time and they, knew her and knew her schedule. They weren't looking for her. They weren't worried about her. They're just like, okay, well, it's just another person who quit without letting us know and keep it moving.
Since Kelly and Brianna did not speak every day, she had not noticed that her daughter was missing either. Kelly began calling everybody she could think of to ask about her daughter. And despite attempts to connect with family, friends, even employers, no one had seen Brianna since Friday night. She had no information about Brianna's location. With no leads, Kelly finally reported her daughter missing. I can't imagine what goes through your head in a situation like this.
No, it's terrible. And at first you're just like, oh, well, you start thinking about all the where they could be's or why they haven't, gotten in contact with you. But I'm sure that quickly devolves, even if you don't admit it to people directly around you. You got to have that true dread and worry in the back of your head.
At this point, Brianna's car had been moved and impounded for 5 days. On Thursday, March 25th, Kelly and Bruce called the Vermont State Police in St. Albans to submit photos of Brianna for a missing persons report. It was during a meeting with the state police when they were finally shown pictures of the abandoned Oldsmobile car that had been found at the old Dutchburn house. The Maitlands identified the car as belonging to their daughter, the one she would have been driving at the time of her disappearance. As news of Brianna's disappearance spread, questions began to emerge as to why the officers sent to investigate the Oldsmobile had not raised an earlier alarm. The car was littered with Brianna's personal belongings, including her purse, jewelry, those uncashed paychecks. There were some packaged foods, and oddly, a lime slice.
Yeah, and it wasn't just on the side of the road, like it's been left or, broken down or something like that. It is in an odd position, up against this old house. You have a little bit of damage to the house, which means you had some type of impact.
And it just seems weird, right?
There was also vomit in the front seat.
Oh, there you go, bud.
Many feel the case was mishandled from the beginning. And while the Vermont State Police continued investigating Brianna's disappearance, they held on to the belief that she was another runaway or maybe swept up in substance abuse. They didn't believe there was foul play involved. Yet Brianna's family and friends didn't believe she would leave with no trace. I mean, again, we've got Brianna. She's a stylish girl. She likes clothes, accessories, makeup. And her family's like, it would be out of character for her to leave and go anywhere and like not take her stuff with her.
That's true for everybody.
And I'm like, believe me, I know. Like, there's no way I would up and leave if I didn't have all my palettes.
I mean, everybody's personal
My
belongings
mascaras.
or what's important to them is different.
My moisturizer.
But nobody leaves and doesn't take any of their stuff.
It doesn't make any sense.
No.
I will never understand why law enforcement immediately goes to this. They just left.
Well, they'll be like, well, they just left. They walked away from their life, but you still take money.
There was
still
also,
take your
I should
ID.
mention, some migraine medication that she had, like a prescription migraine medication. She suffered serious migraines, and it was also found. And her parents were like, she would never leave and not take her migraine medicine.
No, because migraines can be very debilitating. So you certainly need the medicine that helps you deal with that.
So after she's been missing for some time, now in 2023, police are convinced that maybe something terrible did happen to her.
Wow.
Quote, we suspect Brianna was the victim of foul play, Major Glenn Hall of the Vermont State Police said to Fox News. Quote, this is not a dormant case and we are actively working it. Now, Bruce Maitland, however, is less confident about his daughter's chances. He said, quote, I don't think this was a random act of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. There was something going on in Brianna's life that we didn't know about. She'd obviously made a connection with someone that may have resulted in what happened to her.
Wow.
Now, her former friend, Keely LaCrosse, who attacked Maitland 3 weeks before her disappearance, was cleared of any potential wrongdoing in connection with her disappearance. And the charges Maitland filed against her because of that attack at the party were dropped 3 weeks after she disappeared. Yet there are plenty of people who think that Keely had something to gain by Brianna's disappearance.
Well, for one, all the charges being dropped. Granted, it's a simple assault charge, I'm going to guess. Not the end of the world. But, I wonder how hard a look they actually took at her, honestly.
Keely, who has a lengthy criminal history, did an interview with True Crime Twins podcast just about her, I guess, how she's been made, to seem in the media.
Right, she's under a cloud of suspicion.
Yes. And I have to say, she, just from what I read of the interview, I don't know how to say this nicely, but it was kind of classless and a little bit trashy.
So
She's almost sort of braggadocious about how she only hit Brianna twice, but caused so much damage to her.
Look, yeah, you nailed it by the way you described that. Even if that's true, even if inside you're like kind of like, yeah, I hit her twice, messed her up. Just the voicing that out loud to anyone after this poor girl's went missing, yeah, no class, super trashy.
She has there's zero sadness about someone who had been her friend that is now missing.
Well, that makes you wonder.
Yeah. Well, the boyfriend, James, that the two girls were fighting over, also had a lengthy criminal history and reportedly died in a car accident, I believe around 2017. In 2012, a human skull, and it was a female skull, was discovered along a Vermont highway. It had been exposed to the elements as if it had spent some years outdoors. Unfortunately, the remains didn't bring any answers to solving Brianna's case. It was not hers.
It's just somebody else's skull. That's scary in itself.
A flurry of theories have circulated over the years since Brianna vanished. So, Dylan, let's discuss some of these theories. Are you ready? I can't wait to hear your unexpert opinion.
Yeah, I can't wait to give it.
Oh my gosh, are you okay?
I'm okay. I just, the cold weather has me a little sniffly.
You're snotting up a storm over there.
I'm trying not to make snot noises.
Well, I just love some mucus on this show. One of the most common theories regarding Brianna's disappearance is a potential drug deal gone bad.
Now, was she known to partake?
Well, let's talk about it. Brianna was known to party, experimenting with drugs and alcohol. Some of the people she considered friends are involved in criminal activities, from drugs to breaking and entering. That lacrosse woman.
Yeah, and James, her boyfriend, who
She was arrested. I found a post. It was like a police report that had been posted on Facebook, where she had been pulled over and like arrested for maybe driving under the influence, and she had a toddler in the car with her.
well, that's not a good
And
look.
driving like recklessly with her young child in the car. Yeah.
Like, he's so little, he won't remember that we hit them 3 stop signs on the way over here.
So whether Brianna had issues with drugs is unknown. One theory is that Brianna owed someone money and had possibly been avoiding that person. It has been speculated that she may have spotted the person or one of their associates when she was out shopping with her mom. Possibly, the night she vanished, Brianna might have met up with person or persons who meant to harm her. However, if she did owe money, there were 2 uncashed paychecks inside the car, which could have easily been taken by someone who was looking for money.
Yeah, if they're dumb enough to try to cash them themselves.
Well, I'm just saying, like, hey, you're going to get these cashed and we're going to get this money.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's 2 paychecks out in the open. Certainly if someone's trying to, rough her up or, shake her down for money, they would, you would suspect something's done with those.
So about 3 years after Brianna disappeared, a police report taken by Burlington officers offered some possible insight. Now, a statement was given by a woman named Debbie Gorton, who lived in Colchester, Vermont. Gorton's sister, Ellen Ducharme, had been charged in the drug-related murder of a young mother named Lygia Collins. In Gorton's statement, she said her sister had spoken about a known drug dealer, Ramon Ryans, who had taken a few $1,000s from Brianna to buy crack cocaine. Brianna wanted the money back and confronted Ryans. Ducharme told Gorton that Ryans abducted Brianna on March 19th, the night her car was discovered. Ducharme then told police that Brianna was alive for up to a week, held by Ryans. She was kept in a basement where they physically tortured her. After she died, they left her in the basement for some days before disposing of her remains at a pig farm.
My God.
Gorton believed several others were involved in the murder and body disposal, including her sister, Ellen Ducharme, Ramon Ryans, Moses Robar, Daryl Robar, and Timothy Cruz. No charges were ever brought against these individuals in Brianna's case. Police raided Nathaniel Charles Jackson and Ramon Ryan's home, but they did not find Brianna. The pair were arrested on drug charges. During interrogation, both men admitted to knowing Brianna Maitland. They claimed the last time they had seen her was in Montgomery, Vermont, about a week before she went missing. Now, this guy, Ramon Ryans, he is the one that reported his girlfriend, Lygia Collins, missing.
Wow.
Ellen Ducharme, along with her boyfriend, Moses Robar, were tried for murdering Collins with a baseball bat, then disposing of her body in Ripton, Vermont.
Man, if they were to get her remains at a pig farm, into some pen of pigs, the right size pigs, they would eat every single speck of her.
Like countless teenagers in northern Vermont, Maitland found it difficult to avoid the many drug dealers who poured into the state from nearby urban areas like New York City, and then, of course, New Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, where they peddled crack cocaine and heroin. And we've seen this everywhere. It's not specifically just this area of New England.
No,
This is happening all over. So a large number of Vermont's rural towns are seriously under-policed. Many don't have law enforcement of their own. So if you call to make a report, it could take up to, an hour and a half for somebody to show up at your house.
And that's a long time.
Because this is some rural areas.
Yeah, I wonder if that's one of the areas where they still have constables. This basically like a civilian with not much authority, But, and then they contact the actual police if something happens.
In some Vermont towns, it's not uncommon to hear citizen complaints about these drug dealers just peddling their, drugs in public places, parks, high schools, parking lots.
Well, yeah, if it takes an hour and a half for the cops to show up, people's going to do all kinds of stuff. They're not going to be afraid of getting caught.
From what I gathered in my research, Dylan, there have been a lot of reports of heroin and cocaine being piped into these border towns, like because Vermont backs up to the Canadian border.
Yeah.
And that they're being fed by these underground like pipelines, if you will, that are maintained by outlaw motorcycle clubs like the Hells Angels in nearby Montreal, which is only about 90 miles away.
Yeah, a lot of people always think of the southern border when it comes to contraband and drugs and stuff. But there's a whole lot of stuff that comes into America from the Canadian border. For one thing is ecstasy and MDMA. That's a big deal.
Well, we've seen in rural areas, you're isolated when you live in a small community and there's not a lot of activities for kids, especially like teenagers. So that contributes to drug use.
Well, yeah.
Because what else you going to do?
Well, that's
go
what,
drink in a field and get high with your friends.
That's what I say around here. There's nothing for kids to do except drink and get pregnant.
Yeah.
In no certain order.
Sadly.
No, it's true, though.
Yeah. Well, there's a skating rink.
Yeah, there's a little skating rink.
And that's about it.
That's about it. And, as kids get a little older and stuff, and I don't know, there's just a community that just doesn't, you don't have to cater to kids, but I really do think you should have things built in, safe spaces that are professionally ran. And that's what you run into. If someone tries an arcade or something, there's no one policing the parking lot. There's all kinds of damn shenanigans going on. And next thing you know, the place is closed down because there's fights and, people carrying on. But yeah, there's nothing safe and
it's true. Like we
legal.
live in a pretty small town. There's not a whole lot to do here for adults. There's definitely not much to do if you're a young person. There's like public park, which let's be honest, teenagers are not going to go to the park and play with where the little kids are.
They're not going to do anything savory.
There's like a skate park.
Yeah.
You do get some kids that go to the skate park. You've got a few basketball courts in and around the area.
And that's about it.
That's about it. And if your kids and your teenagers are not into sports and they don't play on sports teams and get socialization kind of that way, outside of like a church youth group or something, there's really not a whole lot to do.
Like, pull over in that parking lot. I want you to look at my engine, and I'll look at your engine.
Well, one of the Vermont State Police investigators named Brian Miller said, quote, "I think for some kids, drugs serve as an escape mechanism from the drudgery and isolation of winter and living in a small town. When there's little to nothing to do, a lot of kids will take turns in the wrong directions."
It's true.
One high school student in Richford, Vermont, said, quote, "Up here, you have to go over 30 miles to see a movie or drive 50 miles to see a live band or dance to music. A lot of us don't have cars or are too young to be able to legally drive. We don't even have a skating rink in this town. Drugs may be bad, but they make things a lot easier to take."
See, we do that. We do the same thing. We have to drive 30 miles. We have a little theater here, but it's just a little place, quite old.
It's so small that I feel like I get whiplash because I have to bend my neck to stare up at the screen.
Well, and I must say, it was closed.
And every time I go there, I end up with a weird motion sickness headache.
But it was closed until a guy purchased it and reopened it.
Yeah, that's true.
And he was known for buying shuttered theaters in small communities and opening them up so people have something to do. But other than that, we drive 30, 40, 50 miles to see a movie or eat, some nice food or go see a band.
Well, yeah, if we don't want to eat at one of the 4 restaurants in town, we have to do that.
It's true.
So Brianna's roommate Jillian said, quote, "Drugs are everywhere you look. It's hard to get away from them. You can't just hide in your house or room all the time." Another theory is that a serial killer is operating in the area. According to reports, from 1970 to 2004, 30 women have vanished from Vermont and New Hampshire. 10 of these women were brutally murdered, and the other 20 are just missing.
Wow, it seems like a lot.
Well, Lynne Schulze is one of them. And one of these women, Dylan, who went missing is Maura Murray.
Oh, my
Now,
God.
I know you've heard that name before.
I have.
Her case has garnered a lot of attention. People want to know what happened to Miss Murray. If you're unfamiliar, Murray went missing on February 9th, 2004 after a car crash on Route 112 near Woodsville, New Hampshire. Like Maitland's case, Fred Murray, Maura's father, blames law enforcement's slow reaction. He said, quote, "She had an accident, and this presented her with a completely different set of circumstances. Any other plans she might have had went out the window. I believe that my daughter would be home safe and sound right now if the police had not ignored the case until it was way too late. They would have known where she was heading if they had bothered to check the last phone call she made 3 hours before she left Amherst." Because she left Massachusetts. "I told the police where she was going 2 days after the accident, but they didn't check that either. The police failed to follow their own procedures and are now striving to prevent this from coming to light. Maura probably did get a ride with one or more of the area's multitudinous sex offenders." I probably didn't say that right. Basically, there's a lot of sex offenders who a law enforcement can't catch because they waited too long to get started.
Man, so you already have a loved one missing, and it must be even more torturous to not think that you truly believe if someone had acted quickly, they could have saved them.
Well, if someone had maybe contacted when they first found this abandoned vehicle and taken it seriously, we might know where Brianna is today.
I think it's true.
So 5 weeks after Murray's accident and disappearance, on March 19th of 2004, Brianna Maitland's empty 1985 Oldsmobile 88 was found. 5 weeks later.
So you think it would be fresh in the, law enforcement's mind?
And though law enforcement denies there is a serial killer preying on women in this area, Bruce Maitland said, quote, "Just because there isn't any evidence is not a reason to close the door on that theory." In mid-February, Vermont State Police informed the Maitlands they had obtained a videotape of a woman who resembled Brianna. And I don't remember I forgot to mark what year this was that they found this. But a surveillance camera in Caesars Casino in Atlantic City had produced the tape. Police requested it from the casino after a man from Vermont had been gambling there and reported seeing a woman that he thought looked like Brianna Maitland. The quality of the tape is poor. The picture's grainy. It's, security camera, so it's taken from a distance. The woman in question, the police believed, looked older than Brianna, and she didn't have a nose ring, and Brianna had a nose ring.
Well, I'm kind of surprised because usually casinos have very high quality, the latest tech.
The woman in the video is with a man who appears to be in his early 40s. Bruce and Kelly Maitland can't positively identify the woman as their daughter, and they doubt very much that it's her. But they said, "We can't discount anything. We would really like to know who it is so that we can move forward with our investigation." One of Brianna's closest friends said, this is Jillian Stout, said, quote, "Brianna would never go anywhere for 2 years and not call me or someone else close to her." So I guess this was like around 2006. She just isn't like that. She was a good friend, and she cared a lot about her friends. They were everything to her. Bruce Maitland said some law enforcement officers have scoffed at the theory that she might be a victim of human trafficking.
Why? It happens every day.
But if you look at the criminal activities that happen all over the United States and even in Vermont, reveal that even in 1999 and 2000, there were several young women in Burlington who were forced into prostitution in New York City. Jose Richie Rodriguez, a 25-year-old, was a convicted felon who lived between Vermont and New York and eventually was arrested and charged with operating a prostitution ring and statutory rape. He also was a suspect in the death of a 16-year-old girl named Crystal Jean Jones, who was at the time a ward of Vermont's Social and Rehabilitation Services Agency.
Well, it sounds like he could possibly, if you're suspected in something happening to one girl, who knows? It could be many victims.
A Burlington Free Press article related to the case said men like Rodriguez come to Vermont to target young women who can be forced into prostitution. I mean, we hear about sex trafficking a lot in the news. And of course, these men often sell heroin to the girls. They become addicted. Then they manipulate them into selling themselves for more drugs. It's a vicious cycle. And they prey upon these young girls and women who maybe don't have the strongest family connections or on their own.
Yep.
Maybe already kind of have a drug problem.
It's an old playbook, and they know exactly how to use it.
Another theory that has surfaced is that Brianna might have been pregnant and that the father of the child met with her after work on the night of her disappearance. Some point to the fact that there was vomit in the seat, as if maybe she was experiencing sickness due to pregnancy. But we have no proof that Brianna was pregnant. We're just going through all of the theories that have been circulated out there. Another case that people point to is the rape and murder of a University of Vermont graduate student, Laura Winterbottom. The perpetrator, Gerald T. Montgomery, committed the crime in Winterbottom's car on March 8th of 2005.
Wow.
So just a year after Brianna went missing. Montgomery worked in an elementary school, though he was a convicted sex offender in New York State.
Well, that doesn't seem right.
No. So in recent years, law enforcement, they did manage to collect DNA from Brianna's car, and they've currently tested it, though it has not yielded a suspect.
So someone's DNA besides Brianna's?
Yes.
Interesting.
And that's all I have for us, Dylan. But her case remains unsolved.
Gosh. Every time.
So as of 2022, they do have the DNA. They say they have, I guess been able to identify it, get a profile.
Okay.
And it's been entered into CODIS, which we know is the FBI's DNA database. And it's been compared to 11 persons of interest, but no match has been identified.
Well, I mean, at least there's that, because you never know with familial DNA and all that stuff. Any day now, there could be a connection.
Well, scientists used forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a DNA profile and genealogical research to develop investigative leads so that the Vermont State Police could continue their work. And so at this point, I guess they're just hoping that maybe one day they'll get a hit in CODIS.
Well, it's one thing about it. If you have no DNA evidence, it's never going to help you. So that's at least one feather in their cap.
These are both really sad cases.
These types of cases always make me super sad. I feel so horrible for the family. I worry and wonder what happened as well to the poor victim. And I also wonder sometimes, did they really just walk away or decide to, change their life and name and hide from all their friends and family?
I know. I mean, it almost seems like an impossibility that someone like Lynne Schulze could have just left and is maybe living on the other side of the world.
Right.
Just going about her day-to-day life and not just cutting all ties with her family. It just doesn't make sense.
No, and especially in this day and age, it's so easy to reach out over social media and the internet, maybe to your favorite friend or family member. But just never, and I'm sure she's probably not accessing her social security number, all that stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it makes you wonder.
Well, Dylan, I hope with these stories we can keep these women in the spotlight, their names, keep attention on their cases in hopes that one day something, we get a break in the case, something happens, we get a DNA match, anything. Maybe someone comes forward with a tip that happens to be just the right information that law enforcement needs.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's the utmost importance of stories like this is the chance that there could be some resolution.
Well, that's what we always hope for.
And I certainly think we owe it to them and their memory to never forget and to always present the facts of their circumstances.
Well, both of these cases, I researched numerous newspaper articles, just tons of news articles.
Oh, wow.
On both. So it did take me a while to compile all the information, but
Well, we appreciate those stories as usual, Heather. Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to go allow this snot gremlin out of my sinuses that all of a sudden decided to descend.
Yay.
Yeah, Heather
Okay.
keeps looking at me like I'm crazy. And
I feel bad for you over there.
till next time, we hope this podcast finds everyone safe, happy, and healthy.
And warm, because it's freaking cold out there right now.
And
And everybody have a happy Thanksgiving.
We hope you do.
Yeah, we'll be back with a midweek or sometime this week because we're not exactly the most reliable. I know that. We're going to get back on schedule, I promise. But we do hope that you are safe if you're traveling out of town and that you have a great holiday, no matter how you spend it.
Or don't spend
Or
it.
don't, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, they're
what-
going to spend it doing something.
Whatever you do, just enjoy it and be careful.
Rest, relax, catch up on your favorite podcasts. The Dark Cast Network has plenty of options for you.
Chock full.
If you're taking a lengthy road trip, you need to load up that queue with some podcasts. Check out some of the options on I will get this down. Dark Cast Network.
Now, what's messing you up is I told you just the other day about I was listening to Darknet Diaries,
It's true.
which is a great podcast as well.
True.
But the Dark Cast Network is chock full
Oh
of
man, there's
indie.
so many good podcasts, Dylan.
good little indie podcasts. We love them all.
We do. All right, guys. See you later.
All right.
Hi,
bye.
guys. I'm Courtney,
And I'm Lisa.
and we are the hosts of The Book of the Dead, a true crime podcast based out of New Jersey, where we tell you about the most obscure cases that you may have never heard of. So join us in the Book of the Dead library for another chapter of The Book of the Dead wherever you get your podcasts. Bye, guys.